Hey guys, Desolate Magic here, and I wanted to make a video about something very important to the actual design of Magic the Gathering, and it kind of changed lately, actually quite a bit. Now, these two different design strategies tend to go back and forth, and I think they're leaning very far towards one side with the last couple sets. And I'm not a huge fan, but there are merits to doing it each way, I guess. So here's the problem with designing any Magic set. If you want to sell the most cards, have the happiest player base, you need high variety and you need high creativity. People don't want to just be handed a deck saying, oh, well, this is the deck. This is which one you chose. Well, except for obviously net deckers, because that's all they do. But I'm talking about not just picking out a specific deck, but just building a deck in the first place at all. So right now, if you were to build Merfolk, there is really one or two ways to build Merfolk. I guess maybe mono blue or blue-green, semi-rush with counters and some explore. And you can put in, 12 control cards or 4 control cards. Or you could go all-in creature rush with, super ramp and then rebuke, which would probably actually have to involve green. But if somebody says, I'm playing a Merfolk deck, you can already imagine what's in it. I mean, it's the Merfolk. There's, 14 of them or something? I mean, and then playable ones, God, there's probably like 7. So what if every set was like that? I mean, what if every single set was like, here's a distinct thing, it only works with itself and it only refers to itself? That just wouldn't be fun to me, because there would be exactly 1 or 2 ways to build any given deck, whatever you chose, whatever archetype, whatever mechanic, whatever tribe. And then, a couple would be better than others, and the best deck would be very clear. And instead of, oh, look at all the tier 1 decks, I wonder which one's going to win, it's like, no, there's almost no variance in the way these are built. This deck is just empirically better. It can beat the other, top decks, and there you go. You got the best deck. Boring. And that doesn't do good things to card prices. I mean, you got your, your $40 cards, and then you got your nothing. Then opening a pack is hit or miss, so people don't open packs, and, nobody can compete with the top deck because it's just unstoppable. Nothing good comes out of that. The whole, oh, the decks are built for you, you're just the one assembling it type of, I guess you would say, set design strategy. So you got your super specifics, which are almost always tribal, okay? Because there's different tiers of opening it up to, wide open strategies. So if you were to break it down, okay, other Merfolk get +1/+1. Okay, there are Merfolk in like 1 set, maybe 2. It's about to be 1 because they're doing away with the 2-part stuff. And okay, that refers to just the other cards, and that's it. It goes in 1 deck, and ta-da. Then you've maybe got something that says, all flying creatures get +1/+1, which actually that is a card right now, I do believe. Or maybe even something that says, like, all dinosaurs get, 1 cheaper, because that could refer to even, I think, 3 different colors at least of dinosaurs. So that's a little bit more wide open, but I mean, flying creatures, there's flying creatures in every set, so if you just want to go flyer heavy, that would be a card. It interacts with a lot of stuff. Then if we were to go 1 level higher, it would be like, some kind of like creatures, like when any other creature enters the battlefield, or even you could say, if you wanted to really gradually go up, if a non-token creature enters the battlefield, then do this. And then a little bit more generic would just be when any creature enters the battlefield, or when any creature dies or is destroyed. Whenever you attack with a creature, do this. So, you could say boost spells would be that. Universal counter spells are wide open. They can target anything. So even control kind of goes into tiers because, you can say, oh, remove target enchantment from play. Oh, or remove enchantment or artifact from play. And it just gets more and more generic, or general, I should say. And of course, typically, because it's more powerful and less specific, you have to pay a little bit more mana for it. So let's take an actual example recently here. Actually, this is still legal. Panharmonicon. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's enter the battlefield effects, aka ETB effects, and it's also like distant ETB effects. So it's not just I enter the battlefield and then I do this. It's I enter the battlefield and then something else, some other permanent has a trigger related to that. So either one of those, it occurs an additional time. So ETB and distant ETB triggers, it doubles them. I mean, that's so wide open. I mean, that could be so many different cards in so many different sets and so many different decks. And then on top of it, it's colorless. Well, then you've even got cards like Pacification Array. It's one colorless, and then you pay 2 and tap it, and then tap target artifact or creature. That can target anything, it can work with anything. I mean, it's just so wide open, it can interact with anything. But mostly, instead of just, okay, control, what are you going to stop, how general is it, how specific is it, because that's like more of a sideboarding thing, honestly. I want to stick to interactions with my own cards in my own decks. So remember, I want to say BFZ maybe, or something from Shadows, one of the two. They had a card where whenever another non-token creature dies, actually it might have just been when another creature dies, you gain 1 life and they lose 1 life. That was so powerful of a card. Actually, yeah, it was Zulaport Cutthroat, and it's whenever any other creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So doesn't matter if you're running tokens or not, sacrifice stack, great, otherwise it's just kind of nice. It just works with everything because it just works with creatures, period. Just creatures at all. Well, every set has creatures. So if you want to get creative, you don't want to be handed a deck and say, oh, build this tribal. Blah, boring. If you just want wide open stuff, I mean, there have been sets like that. Like just the whole mechanic of devotion, that was just insane. I mean, you look at like allies and cohort or whatever it was called, it only worked with other allies. It was very self-contained. You just picked a color and then ran allies. Very few options, not very creative. But then you look at devotion and it's like anything that is a permanent and costs mana builds your devotion. So you could add devotion to like any other deck and kind of scale it up and down in the power. That was so wide open, just the whole mechanic itself was completely wide open. I loved it. So they should build every set super wide open, right? Because if you've got, oh, this card works with any creature, this works with any flyer, this works with any permanent leaving the battlefield, this works with a casting trigger on any spell. I mean, even just the prowess mechanic, that worked with any non-creature spell at all. Mana ramp itself is a mechanic, that works with anything. If there's good mana dorks and good rampy cards, you can put that in any color if it's colorless. So there was a lot of artifacts that tap for 1 or 2 mana that were legal recently. I love cards that can go into virtually anything or interact with the largest number of permanents. I love that because from a deck builder's perspective, it just mathematically, just from a pure mathematical standpoint, increases the number of combinations. And you might come up with one and think, oh, that's actually pretty neat, and then build a deck around it. Not like a single purpose thing, but just, oh, these go together, and this goes together, and that goes together. Oh, nobody's done that before. That would actually be really powerful. And then you build the deck and you try it, and maybe you win with it, maybe you lose with it, maybe it shocks you with how amazing it is, maybe it doesn't. But that's the fun of it. I mean, the whole game is a deck building game. I mean, that's pretty much what it was supposed to be. I mean, just ask the staff. They said, back in the day before the internet, before net decks, before tournament stats and all this stuff, people just built whatever they wanted. They improved it over time. They traded with each other, and you know, it was a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable, and a lot less highly competitive. I mean, mirror matches were not a thing. It was just better to play the game back then, basically. So they should print every single set instead of just tribal, cookie cutter deck, here you go, build it. Everything should be wide open, right? Not quite. Remember Felidar Guardian? Okay, that was their attempt at a fun, somewhat usable, kind of cool, universal interactive card. Because if you think about it, well, let's just read it. It's a 4-cost 1/4, so it already kind of sucks. But when it enters a battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control. So anything. It could be a land. Then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So universal flicker, and it can hit any permanent at all. Oops, they accidentally let it through testing without realizing what would happen if they targeted a Planeswalker, because a Planeswalker is a permanent. And in case you weren't paying attention, they had to ban Felidar Guardian. So, whoopsies. Now think about, you know, that, Panharmonicon, even like Cryptolith Right, that would work with any kind of creature. Any creature could now tap for mana. I mean, that card was just broken. It was just a stupid idea. You get these wide open cards, and you can only test so much. You only have so much testing time. And if you like exponentially increase the number of card interactions, it just gets out of the reach of what a human can do. So for every super general wide open card that's, you know, moderately powerful or playable, or even the ones that aren't, like Felidar Guardian, that was a garbage card, but whoops, turn 4 win the game combo. So yeah, flickering any permanent, you don't get much more wide open than that, but this is what happens when it backfires. And so if you just have Panharmonicon and you're like, okay, let's look at every single card in Standard that has itself an enters the battlefield effect, or any other cards that refer to other cards entering the battlefield. So let's just look at all of them. Okay, they're all fair. And let's look at the next set and the next set after this. Okay, they're all fair. Or when you're designing the next set after it, you think, oh, we can't really put this into the set because Panharmonicon would be too powerful with this. And then you cut it. But if that's all you have to worry about is just, okay, nothing but ETBs. Okay, so this card's legal for 2 years. We just can't make any really crazy enters battlefield effects or infinite combos with just Panharmonicon. Okay, cool. Well, now add 100 other hyper-generic cards that work with everything. It's ridiculous. You would probably, at that point, with 100 unique cards that are like that, accidentally create so many overpowered decks, overpowered strategies, and infinite combos because R&D just would not be able to test that many combinations. It's just impossible. Well, it is possible, I mean, with computer assistance and even just knowing the game and knowing card design, and before you even design the card, look at what's been legal in the past and just do a quick individual check if there's something broken with that. It's not really that hard if people put in enough effort, but it's very clear that research and development and playtesting does not put in sufficient effort, or they're just not skilled enough, or I don't know what their problem is. Apparently neither does Wizards because they just hired 2 more people to just oversee the entire process. I mean, they literally brought in 2 new people by name, announced it and everything, and said like basically their job is to oversee all the other people who don't know how to do their job properly and make sure that they can do their job properly and don't let crap like Felidar slip through the cracks. So that is the paradox, or the conundrum, or the between a rock and a hard place situation. If you make, the sets more fun, more dynamic, and just build it into a deck builder's paradise of a set, even multiple sets in a row where people are just wide open to come up with anything creative, people love it, people try more decks, they build more decks, they spend more on cards, potentially. I mean, it might kind of spread out the money, where instead of just one $500 deck and a couple high ones, and then just the rest are $10, maybe every deck you build would kind of have, $3, $4 rares in it, maybe. I feel like under that scenario, still some would rise to the top, but at least people could be creative and have fun with it. So it would be the ideal thing that makes more money if they can pull it off, and that is the if, because they have proven that they cannot. And to make matters worse, instead of whatever they were going to do, I want to say 5, 6, 7 or 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6 as a legal cycle twice a year, which was the proper mathematical way to do it, they're letting up to 8 sets be legal at a time. So remember, 8 sets have been legal at a time at the maximum before cycling for quite a while now, and they know this. So I think because that just increases the number of potential card interactions, they've just been printing such like vanilla tribal blah. I mean, Red Black Vampire Madness, that was a deck. Just, it is what it is. Blue White Spirits, that was a deck. There's one way to build it. It's boring. There's no creativity. There's no different takes on it. It's just build it or don't. Simple. And that's because, Madness and Discard and Vampires, they all referenced each other. They were all in their own little world, and you didn't have to check them with many outside cards because they only worked with themselves. So it's this happy little bubble where, okay, the deck is just this powerful. It can't get any better. And it is what it is. And then if it's not competitive, oops, we just blew that entire deck and that entire color and that entire strategy. I don't like that. I mean, I think there has to be that for people who do want like a handholdy kind of deck to build, where it's just, you look at it and you're like, oh, landfall. I could build a landfall deck, and then, yeah, okay. I mean, landfall was kind of generic because it didn't specify the color, but it was primarily a green thing. Green had all the land fetch, so it was the best way to do it. But some people are like, yeah, I'll just put in the best land fetchers, the best land triggers, and 24 lands. And there you go. There's a deck. I mean, it's just handed to you, and you're just like, cool, easy. Because, I mean, on the flip side, if you're trying to build a good deck, you might get overwhelmed by, okay, this interacts with every creature. This interacts with every enchantment. This interacts with every spell. And so every time you're like, what would pair really well with Panharmonicon? Oh, like a third of the creatures in the game. Okay. So then you got to look at a list of 150 creatures, maybe 100 if it was on color. I don't know, something in that neighborhood. And it's just like overwhelming, and it takes you so long to build a deck that it becomes like work, and maybe it's not quite fun. I will take 10 hours to build a deck. I don't care. I like the puzzle. I like the pursuit. I like solving problems and, logical stuff. And I get excited when I find 2 cards that go together. But that's not everybody's cup of tea. So should I, recommend to Wizards that they just absolutely open it up to super wide open interactions, make all the best interactive cards colorless so everybody can put it in a deck? No, but, should they shift 100% to just blah tribal, which I heard is how Hearthstone is. It's just, oh, what deck are you running? In every, I want to say color, I don't think that's right. In every tribe or group or whatever, there's really only a couple decks at a given time, and it's very obvious what you're supposed to build, and you just get the cards and there's really no excitement and no adventure in it. You just try to outplay the person and outdraw them due to sheer luck. Kinda boring, kinda dull. I don't get why people play that game. I mean, you hang a sign on the game that says no creativity allowed, and I don't get why that attracts people, other than really, really lazy people that don't like building decks. I guess that would be the perfect game for them. So maybe that's what all the players are. Or maybe people were greatly exaggerating how Hearthstone works, because I don't play it. But for Magic, I mean, I think swinging into the extremely general thing, make everything wide open and just see what happens, see what the players come up with, you can always fix it with a ban. I know bans really piss people off, especially net deckers, because they're always running the cards that get banned. I mean, if the card wasn't a problem and it was $1, nobody's going to care if it gets banned because it's not in any decks. But if it's hyper powerful and broken, it's going to be in some decks. So no matter what, you're going to ban a lot of money from people's pockets. But what do you do if everything's tribal? Which honestly is kind of how Ixalan is. I mean, you got some stuff where it's like, oh, I could generate a treasure, but I'm not running a treasure deck. But then you got all the pirates refer to pirates, all the merfolk refer to merfolk, dinosaurs refer to dinosaurs, except for Enrage, that's kind of wide open. It's just so encapsulated, it's like, oh, which tribal are you going with? And I get it, the storyline is literally tribes, it's like fighting nations and tribes, but still, that's kind of, oh, we're just following the story. Like, no, you made the cards first and you made the story fit. I think we all know that at the end of the day, that's almost definitely how they do it. So what do you do when the whole game just devolves into just tribal, and all the decks are made for you, and there's nothing left to interact, and you just pick one and build it? You lose customers, you lose players. People are just like, I'm sick of this. I want to build my own deck, but there's nothing that goes together. And the game is dangerously close to that right now. It's not nearly as wide open as it was a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Not even close. So I think they shouldn't go nuts with it. They should find a happy balance, but I would lean more towards just generic stuff and just release it into the world and see what people do with it. But within reason, you do still have to actually test it. So what do you guys think? Which one do you prefer? And have you ever been totally overwhelmed by, oh, it's all just tribals, what the hell? Or, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed by the number of decisions and card interactions and all the options to consider. I hate building a deck in this environment. I've been at both. Right now, it's just tribal, and not much can compete with tribes because they powered them up so damn high. Like mono white vampires or black white vampires, that is just a damn good deck. Very competitive. Blue white spirit control, or even like some kind of weird Esper thing that was spirit heavy back in the day with Eldritch Moon, that was rough. Well, I mean, Spell Queller Reflector Mage, they had to ban the damn card. So yeah, to say it was rough is an understatement. So they went nuts with the tribal power to make sure that if somebody did come up with something clever that they didn't think of, that wasn't clearly, outlined in the deck design or the set design, then it really still could, like, maybe it was kind of good, but it wouldn't compete with, their existing pre-made deck ideas, basically. And now the last point I gotta make is I mentioned card prices and I kind of explained it, but there's one more thing, okay? If you make wide open universal synergy, universal trigger, stuff like prowess, stuff like Panharmonicon, ETB cloning, creature death, whatever, people won't be forced to just buy the same one or two sets, which, I mean, look what that did to energy. There is no energy. Energy works with itself. It only works with cards that are in Kaladesh and Aether Revolt. Every other card is like dead to it because you don't need it besides like some kind of removal or board wipe or just whatever generic, counter spell from another set. So gee, what happens when people are like, I'm building energy? Which, I mean, energy was, I think there's like 5 colors of energy, so at least you had options. It's not like you could just say I'm building energy. But then again, clearly 1 or 2 color combinations were the most powerful. That was just proven to be true. So if everybody's like, I'm playing energy, cool, that's what I built. Okay, pre-made, cookie cutter, blah. Next set comes out. Okay, Embalm can't compete with energy. Okay, I'm not gonna buy it. Not even gonna touch it. It's not like, oh cool, I'm gonna upgrade my deck with 4 cards from Amonkhet. Awesome, because they have better cards that work with Panharmonicon. They have better ones that work with flying boosters. Cool, I rebuilt my deck and it's more powerful now. Yay, I bought cards. No, with energy, it was Amonkhet came out, no thanks. Hour of Devastation came out, no thanks, don't need anything from it. Oh, and then Ixalan came out, no thanks, don't need anything from it. And what did that do to sales numbers and card values, which are the same thing? They went down the toilet, so you can't encapsulate stuff like that. It doesn't work because it ties people into one set, and then if you get a little bit too powerful with it, or even, I mean, what if it wasn't energy? What if it was Embalm? That was the most powerful mechanic, and then everybody went with Embalm. well then everybody would abandon Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, get rid of that deck, don't play with it anymore, ditch energy, and then the next, 5 sets or whatever after that would be terrible. So it doesn't really matter the time frame, it doesn't really matter the order. Really good self-contained, mechanics and effects and decks from single sets, or groups of 2 sets, I should say, they will stop people from buying the one after it. That's why you need, like, to mix cards from this set, this set, this set, this set, this set, and this set, and I built a deck out of cards from every single set, and look how unique this is, look how amazing this is, because then if you got generic interactions, it just works. I mean, quite literally, if you're like, this card works with any other creature, and then they release Rivals of Ixalan, and oh, look, it has creatures in it, you might want to buy some cards from Rivals instead of just, nope, I'm good with energy, no thanks, I'm spending 0. So as much as Wizards doesn't like, overpowered, hyper-powerful tier 0 decks effectively, where they're just like on the ban list automatically, that doesn't get them good PR and marketing, and makes people just outright quit the game because they're like, oh my god, you just got rid of, Smuggler's Copter, I spent $100 on that playset, thanks. They got so scared that they took the safe and boring route, and it lost them even more money. So that's why they gotta find the middle ground, and like I said, I would still, instead of dead center, just lean a little bit more towards let us build some stuff and put the puzzle pieces together however the heck we want. So hopefully you understand my arguments here, and hopefully Rivals, or I should say the next set after Rivals Dominaria, is a bunch of just universal, just whatever stuff. That would be awesome. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully something like Devotion comes back, so we can bring back monocolored decks with glaring weaknesses that make for hilarious matchups. I mean, if you're playing just blue, there's things you can't do, like, for example, damage. But if you're getting that blue Devotion, I mean, you might be able to make something out of it. It's just so funny because it's like, oh, you're playing red, you literally cannot destroy an enchantment. Or you're playing black, you literally cannot destroy an artifact. There isn't a card in the game that can do that, or at least in Modern. Kaladesh might have changed that. I feel like, I don't remember. I love that because it's just so funny because there's like no other option because you can't compete with Devotion, but Devotion decks were like almost always monocolored. Even if you tried to splash something, it wouldn't usually work. And that was just hilarious to me. It was so fun. The matches were so fun. So bring that back. At the bare minimum, bring mono back. But that's a topic for a different video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.